Hello, this is Christian Idealism, and I have an announcement to make. That is, I am going to have to basically quit YouTube. And there's different reasons for that, which I will explain in this stream. And then we'll do a live Q&A so that I can explain myself. So here's the first reason, I guess you could say. About a month ago, let's just say 6 months ago, 4 to 6 months ago, I think, because I applied for this position multiple times. I got a phone call that I had a job, got a job that I really, really wanted, and I started this job back in June 15th. So it was a few weeks ago. And this is a job that I've really wanted for many, many years. And I have to focus on that right now. Now, the reason why I'm focusing on that is because I actually have the job that I want as a career, in the sense that this is a pathway in which I can actually start to make actual money, and I can actually eventually live on my own. So what does that mean? Well, it means that I have to stop all unnecessary activities, and I need to focus on my life right now. What does that mean? Well, it just means that I need to really step up. And so hobbies like this cannot coexist with what I'm doing, because I need to focus on my life first before I can spend my free time doing anything else. So that's kind of the main reason. That is the number one main reason why, is because I got a job that I really, really wanted. I got a job where I could potentially I can work my way up in the position I'm in. Another reason why is because I need to focus on schooling. So I am near the end of my college years, which means that sooner or later, it's going to be sooner, I'm gonna have to live on my own, right? So I can't rely upon other people to live at places. Like right now, I live with a few family members, and they supported me and stuff. But eventually, they're gonna expect me to live on my own, right? As we all do. We all have to grow up eventually. And so for me, when it comes to YouTube, it's always been a hobby. It's always been something that I've done, on the side. Another thing with YouTube is that there's a few things when it comes to YouTube. The first thing is that YouTube is not essential for me to do philosophy. So I can study philosophy anytime I want. I don't need a YouTube channel to do that, right? I do not need this YouTube channel to study things. Like, I have all these books right here that I'm still gonna have even if this channel didn't exist, I would still be studying this stuff on the side, right? YouTube has always been a hobby. It's never been something that is essential to my studies or even essential to my life. Another thing with YouTube, at least in my situation, is that I don't have any donors. So I don't have a Patreon. I don't have anyone that has. I've had a few people that donate money to me, but I don't receive that money. So unfortunately, any funds that have been sent to me, I'm sorry, guys, that I have not been able to collect those. That's outside of my control, and that's just because of the way that the YouTube algorithm works. That's the other thing I want to mention when it comes to YouTube, and that is that even if this channel grew to a large size, let's say I grew this channel to 100,000 subscribers, that'd be great, right? But in terms of a career, I don't see that being my career, in the sense that I don't see myself being a YouTuber as an actual thing I do. There's a few reasons for this. Number one, advertisement. So advertisers are less likely to support channels like mine, because my channel deals with religion, and religion is a controversial subject, right? Cameron Pertusky of Capturing Christianity has mentioned the same thing in the past, where advertisers typically don't go to religious channels or political channels because of the controversies that surround them. So that's the first reason when it comes to YouTube, is that I don't make any money whatsoever from this. Number two is that I could be spending my time, instead of writing scripts, I could actually be writing a book, right? So I could actually be writing philosophical papers, or, doing, things that are actually going to help me in the long run. Making a YouTube video is fine. Like, I don't have a problem with that. And I've made multiple YouTube videos. I've made hour-long videos. But there's this but. That doesn't help me in the long run. I could take some of those videos and write papers, right? Translate them into philosophical papers, which I do plan to do, and I'll get into that. But when it comes to the actual video itself, I'm not really reaching that many people on this channel. And that's just because of the way that the algorithm works. And so that leads me to my next reason, which is the algorithm. The YouTube algorithm sucks for people like me. It sucks because I typically, well, first of all, I'm not very good at like making these short clip videos, but also because that wasn't really how I set up this channel. So when I initially, especially like the first big videos that I made, it was like documentary style stuff. Like, we're talking hours and hours of content. And the YouTube algorithm has made it impossible for those kind of channels to succeed. Right. So these things are outside of my control. Right. All the things that I mentioned, problems with YouTube, my job, stuff like that. So what's the plan? Well, here's the plan. I have decided to quit YouTube for at least 1 year. So what does this mean? Well, it's July 1st, which means I got until July of next year to decide if I'm going to return. Okay. I've planned this out for quite some time, so I've thought about quitting YouTube many times before, but the main thing that was stopping me from making this announcement was I was just going to see if I got the job I wanted. That was like going to be the main deciding factor. But because I have the job that I really, really want, then I made the decision to just cut it off. Because my energy and resources could be put elsewhere. So what does that mean? Well, what it means is that I'm not going to be making YouTube content anymore, but I will still be doing philosophical research. So the first thing is that I am going to be continuing my other projects. For example, me, John Buck, and Sebastian from Naturalism Next have all agreed to write a long critique of Fall Theodicies. I'm not going to abandon that project. I will get to that project now, or at least I will. So like side projects like that are going to be more of a priority for me, in the sense that I'm not going to abandon any other projects that I agree with other people. I'm only abandoning the projects that I agree to myself. But if there's other projects out there that I've agreed with people to do, like John Buck is one person, another person is Tim Howard. So me and Tim Howard are working on a presentation. Those projects, those collaborations, I will still continue to do those. So that's not the issue. The issue is that any videos that I make from this point forward, I'm not going to do anymore because of all the things that I mentioned. So any projects, any collaborations that I've done with other people, I will continue to do those. So don't worry, John Buck. I know you're watching this. I am for sure going to get to our project on that. Same thing with Tim Howard. So Tim, if you're watching this, we will work on our presentation. So that those projects are going to still continue. What's not going to continue, however, is the current series that I'm working on. And that's because I have decided to make the series that I'm working on as a book. So I'm going to write a book instead. I'm not going to write or at least I'm not going to create videos back to back to back as, oh, here's one argument for theism and here's another one. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a book. And then once I'm done with that book, then I'll do video content on the book itself. And then I'll just reference people to the book that I write. So that's the other thing I want to mention. This is the big announcement, which is that I plan to write a book, because I realized, especially writing the script for this long series that I'm working on, is going to take like that. It's a book length, basically. It's literally a book length project. And so I've decided, you know what? I'm just going to focus on that. Okay. So I'm going to write a book on my case for theism, or at least the methodology behind it, at the very least. So that's the big announcement, which is I'm going to write a book. And that's that. So I'm going to write a book. I'm getting off YouTube for a year, and I've already mentioned the reasons why. And that's pretty much it. So if you guys have any questions for me, go ahead and ask, because I'll be on here for the next hour or so. And hello, Caleb Jackson. What you doing?
Hey, this was planned, by the way. I didn't just hop on during his
yeah.
Although that would have been pretty cool, though. Nice. Sorry, I'm late.
No,
I'm excited that you're writing a book. I think that's a good avenue, and it's nice to see that you can be a fellow author. So that's good. But excited for that.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna answer any and all questions that that people have for me.
How many do we have watching right now?
Only 9, but all right. Do you have any advice on how to build a following? So it depends what you're trying to do. Typically shorter videos are better. I've discovered that the hard way. And that's where I think most of the things are going to be. Now, it really depends on what your audience is trying to be, but yeah. What was the straw that broke the camel's back regarding making YouTube content? So it was my job that I got. I'm working 40 hours a week, and I need to focus on that, because the job I have is really, really good in the sense that it's going to help me in my career. It's going to help me succeed in life. And so that is far, far more important than YouTube. I don't know about you, Caleb, but when you have a good job opportunity, you kind of need to prioritize that over YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't have to choose between making a living and paying the bills and doing what you love, right? You can have a job and then also, as a hobby, write a book or make YouTube videos or whatever you want, right? In that way. But of course, I mean, you're going to school for something that you obviously care about, philosophy, right? So I think maybe someday you will get to the point where you can be sustainable and become a professional, right? But until that day comes, this is the best way. But it's also just hard to be sustainable on YouTube. I mean, we both know Derek Lambert, right, of Myth Vision, who does it for a full-time living. I think Michael Jones does his for a full-time living. Cameron Bertuzzi. But I do fear with, people who are full-time YouTube, they may have short-term success, but, can they sustain that for 10, 15 years down the road? Almost certainly not, just statistically. Very, very rare that happens. So YouTube is great, but I think having YouTube as a secondary avenue to a primary way to make money and also produce content is good. So I think your YouTube channel should supplement your work, but it doesn't necessarily mean to be the only means by which you put it out.
So this is the thing I want to get into, because this is kind of the main reason why I'm quitting YouTube for now, at least, which is that this channel, I've noticed on my channel, at least, I don't know about you, but like all of my philosophical work that I've quote unquote done, besides like actual school assignments, is on YouTube, is on my channel. So like those hour-long videos, all that stuff is all my work, right? Or at least a compilation of other people's work, right? And that's fine and all, but like you can't do that. Like those videos took a very long time to make. Like those were not easy to put together. Like I could have used that time doing something else, right? Or even just the script, right? And I don't make, again, this is coming from someone that like I make zero money from this. In fact, I've literally had to pay money so that I can get the software needed to make these videos in the first
place. You make
place.
negative money. You literally are spending money to do it. Yeah.
I am literally spending money to do this. So it's like
a giant microphone, by the way. I don't know how much that costs, but that's speaking of spending money.
This is one example. This microphone I had to buy. This camera I had to buy. The software to edit my videos I had to buy. Some of the music licenses I've had to get so that my videos don't get blocked, right? I mean, there's so many different things. But the point is, like, if you want to do YouTube as a hobby, that's fine, but that's different than doing it as a career, right? Especially in my situation where it's like, well, I already have a job that, you know, that's actually going to help me in the long run. So yeah. Let me see here.
And I think also just having, I mean, because Cameron's really good at balancing, and I would say Derek as well, balancing scholarship with like a popular level approach to where they can appeal to a wide enough base where they can get thousands of views every video, and yet also still deal with stuff that has a lot of content in it. But I feel like with a lot of the stuff you do, it is very in depth and very analytical, which is great for content, but it makes it more niche, and it's not, going to be a video that everyone's just going to share around, because I think it's higher level and harder to access.
Yep.
And I think you're aware of that, and that's what you want it to be, right? So we've talked about this before in terms of there's a very fair balance between intermediate, pop, and technical, where it's like you want to get your content there, you want to have the citations, you want to get what you want to say, but if that makes it a more niche audience and it limits it because you're going to turn some people off just because it's too technical, you have to decide if that's what you're willing to do, and if you ultimately just do this to have it out there as a resource for a more niche market, right? But on the other hand, if you make it more popular, you'll get more views, but it's also like there are other people out there doing similar things, right? So I think the more detailed you get, the more unique content you get in terms of what does Christian idealism offer that other channels don't, and you have your analytic Swinburnian approach that you don't see many other Christian apologists doing, at least online, right?
Yeah.
But as a result of that, because it's not as accessible as the Craig stuff, right? But there's also 1,001 channels talking about the Kalam, so it's kind of a balance between getting unique content that's going to be valuable to a smaller group of people, but still valuable nonetheless, versus getting content that's going to be more widely accessible, but also kind of more generic in what it covers.
Yeah. Do you prefer oneself? I think I hold the Joshua Sijiwadi's model of the Trinity. So basically, it's all one will. If that makes sense. That's what I would say. How long is the book planned to be?
Well, we can have a competition, Kyle, if we want to do longer books.
No. I would lose. You beat me.
my book that I'm doing on Miracle, hoping will be out spring of 2024. Fingers crossed. It's not absolutely certain, but I'm hoping this. Probably, I'm estimating it'll be close to 700 pages and well over 200,000 words. So if he wants to beat that, he's more than welcome to try.
I am gonna. So I actually don't know yet. If I had to put a range, I would say between 100 pages and 300 pages. So somewhere. I know that's a big range, but that's kind of like I'll just start writing it, see how much I need to add and stuff. But my goal is to make it at least the size of a booklet, so like at least 100 pages. That's my goal. So
it's like a Gideon Bible that you're just going to hand out to people.
Yeah. Like I have a book up there. I don't know if I'll grab it. It's called The Inference That Makes Science. It's like this big. It's like super short, but it's like so much detail that makes a lot of concepts. So
100 pages of like you could have, I don't know how long like Frank Turk's book, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist is. I think it's like 200 or so pages or so, but it's pretty accessible, and the font is not very small, right? Versus Trent Doty's book on animal suffering is like maybe 150. It's a pretty thin book, but the entire page is very dense and very technical. That's not a bad thing, but just so you can have a lot, you can say more stuff in 100 pages than some people can say in 400 pages.
Yeah, that is true. All right. Do you have a prospective title yet? So if I were to title it, I have a few titles in mind. So the first one is A Guide to Theistic Confirmation. The second one would be Theism and Probability, although that's kind of, there's already a book title like that, so I probably can't use that.
I think your first one sounds like it would be a subtitle.
Yeah, so it would probably be, hold on, because I have notes on this.
And if you want to sound really pretentious, each chapter can be like in Latin and then have the part there. That's just.
Yeah, let me see if I can find the. So yeah, it would be. This is gonna sound like a weird title, but this is like another one that I think would be good, which is the epistemic structure of theism, the logic of probabilities, and the logic of science, or something like that. So it's gonna be a technical. It will be technical in the sense that like, it is gonna be like not the not just some ordinary person will be able to understand it, but it will be popular level so that it's not too like it's not written just for scholars. So that's what I'm gonna.
Like maybe intermediate level, or at least
Kind of like Josh Rasmussen's book, kind of like that.
which one? How Reason Can Lead to God.
Yeah, it'll be similar to that in the difficulty level. So that's what I would say.
Do you plan on having formal logic in it?
Yeah.
Okay,
At least in the subnotes, in the footnotes,
okay.
yeah. Not in the main text, but in the footnotes.
Or you could have an appendix or an excursus that has that if you wanted to cover it, where that might actually be more acceptable. If you want to make it to where you get your points across, but you want to have the technical stuff in it, you could put that in the back of the appendix, where if they want to go check it, they can, for those 5 people who are curious. But that, because I don't know about you, but like I think I've talked to people, and like I'm one of those people where when I start seeing numbers and like formulas on a page, I just skip over it and just I don't even try if I see base theorem or something.
Are any of you guys reading anything good lately? So for me, I don't believe it or not, but I don't read that many books. Most of the stuff I read is papers. I think those are better. I learn more from papers than I do from books. So
yeah, I was actually going to say a similar thing. There's some books I need to get Andrew Horonich's, who's a friend of ours, book on universalism that just came out.
I actually have it. I haven't read it yet, but
yeah. You ordered it? Oh, nice. I need to get it. But
opinions on NDEs. I'm skeptical of demon possessions. NDEs, not as much. I think there are some good cases of near-death experiences, but demon possession, even as a Catholic, I will say I'm very, very skeptical, and that's not just to like because I haven't listened to the data, because I've listened to all of Cameron Pertusky's interviews on that. What I'm skeptical about is the church's like the rules. Like it seems kind of weird that like you can't video record this stuff, especially now with like you can just block off the face of the person, you know. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you think, Caleb, but I know you're more miracle stuff, but
yeah, I mean it's funny with the demon possession, the video thing too, because there have been some extras who say, well, they have tried filming it and the demons just are like destroyed the footage, which seems very ad hoc to me, or very convenient like that, right? But I don't know. But I think the problem with, I agree with you on your skepticism of that. And I think in principle, like I even agree with the church's criteria, but I think the problem is that a lot of it is, I want to say, I don't want to just dismiss anecdotes, but it's not like in a controlled setting, right? Like when you're doing miracle healings, you have doctors who are there who verify at the time when the person's sick, and then pre and post medical records. It's in a controlled setting with tests, right? And it's not like and it's in a generally calm area. When it comes to demon possession, usually it's something that happens where it's just being recounted by memory. Like this isn't being written down immediately at the time, and so saying that someone has a fracture in the arm, let's say, of a certain thing, you can measure that's and write down, like that's not usually questioned. Whereas if someone says like, oh, I saw the person levitate who was possessed, it's like, well, how fast did it happen? Some of it happens in a few seconds. They put them down. It's like, okay, well, did they jump? Like, are you sure you're remembering that right? Could it have been you just misperceived it? Was it dark out? Like, there's just so many things you have to ask, and it's just harder to control for the other options. Whereas medical stuff's a lot more. We already use the standards in modern medicine in terms of how to do a diagnosis and stuff like that. So it's a lot less tricky with that. In terms of NDE stuff, I think a lot of it's the same. In principle, there are some really interesting studies I think the most interesting with one done was involved people who had NDEs and were able to see, they reported it like, oh, this is how they resuscitated me, right? And they had a control group where they had people who did not have NDEs, and they asked them, can you describe to me how you imagine your resuscitation went? And the people who had NDEs who claimed to have been observing it were much more accurate and able to get a lot of details right. Whereas the people who were basically guessing were just describing things like how they saw it on TV and kind of imagined it, which is not always accurate. And so that one, I think, like stuff like that's interesting when you have a control group. But the other ones where it's anecdotal of like, oh, I saw a shoe on the roof when I was doing NDE, those are interesting. But again, this is where it's hard to know if the details are being recounted accurately. Because my concern is that people are either going to misremember things or ask leading questions, where it's like, there's a difference between someone waking up and saying, oh, I saw a shoe on the roof, it's blue, go look at it, and they do, versus someone waking up, it's like, oh, I saw myself floating in the body, I fell out of the building, and someone says, oh, did you see the shoe on the roof? And they're like, yeah, I did see the shoe on the roof. And they go, it's like, oh my gosh, they saw the shoe on the roof. Like, you see how that's like a leading question where it's your and people do that with psychics and stuff, sometimes unintentionally. So you just have to be really careful. And so when people recount these stories, unless you have like a transcript, it's always hard to know if they're being recounted accurately or if there was a leading question that was asked, because that does happen a lot. So that's a difficult thing to do.
What's your full-time job? I can't get into details, but I work for the state government. I'll say that.
Same. Different states, though.
Yeah, different states. All right. Question for Caleb. Any future projects planned for the channel? That's for you, Caleb.
Yeah, well, I don't really, I mean, I have a channel in the most primitive sense, but I usually am on other people's shows, right? Just because I'm more of a writer than I am a video editor. So I do plan on, when my book comes out, again, hopefully spring of next year, I will probably just do an entire, literally chapter by chapter kind of lecture. That way, for people who don't want to read the whole book, it'll be like a kind of a shortened version of that.
Yeah.
So I'll do a video on each chapter and summarize it. But I don't have a book planned after that, and I think it's because, given how long this one's going to be, I really need to just take a break.
Yeah, take a break.
Yeah, I've written 2 other popular level ones, but not to the extent of what this one's going to be. But I do think I do want to have I do have some ideas for papers, and a lot of them might be based on material of the book that either didn't make it in or is excess, and I can summarize it in those. So I do want to do a paper with Travis Worth, who's another YouTuber, on the argument from religious experience. I want to do a paper with Andrew Horonich on what I would call the divine wager or the ethical wager argument against, in favor of universalism. So I have some ideas for collaborations I do want to do in the future, but that's all I'm going to have to wait till probably at least next year.
Yeah. All right. Oh, wait, sorry. I keep on right-clicking. Can you summarize why you don't think the polygon works? I'm having trouble grasping how the auxiliary axiological hypotheses relate to the main theory of theism. So yeah, I would say rewatch some of my older content on this. But if I were to summarize it just briefly, what I would say is that in order to generate a disconfirmation, you have to conjoin theism with an auxiliary hypothesis about value. In other words, you have to bring in some value factor that's going to say, hey, this evil is unjustified. So that's the important thing, is like, we're not disputing that there's evil. What we're disputing is whether evil is unjustified, right? But in order to get there, you have to add in an auxiliary hypothesis about value. So you have to, in order to generate this thing we call unjustified suffering, you're going to have to add in some factor into that, right? And so that's going to be an auxiliary hypothesis about value. That's going to be your value assumption in that case, right? And the thing is, like with theism, you can always conjoin theism with an auxiliary hypothesis that doesn't get you to the conclusion that the evils that we've observed are actually unjustified, right? So for one example, one auxiliary hypothesis is the idea of defeat, where as long as an evil is so as long as the evil is defeasible, then it's justified. But if it's indefeasible, if it's intrinsically indefeasible, then it's unjustified, right? Now that doesn't itself solve the problem, but at least it raises the bar enough so that it's kind of difficult to infer that there is unjustified suffering. And then once you put in a theodicy or a theodical story that goes along with those axiological assumptions, those value assumptions, then that's where you screen off the disconfirmatory power of the problem of evil. So that's how it works. I mean, both sides have to use auxiliary hypotheses. Like, there's no way to avoid it, because anytime we say, "Well, I would expect God to do this," well, you're building in your you're building in your value theory, right? So everyone has to do that. I don't know, Caleb. Any thoughts on that?
I would, yeah, and I would just go off of that and say I don't think that there's sufficient criteria to establish what an undefeated evil would look like, unless it's a cat. I mean, like in terms of quantity, yes, there are categories I can think of, like, I mean, perhaps an eternal hell, or at least
Yeah.
a world in which there was no afterlife, or a world in which people got amnesia every 5 seconds and couldn't build virtue, and it was always just sporadic. I think those would be the kinds of evil that would be disconfirming of theism. But in terms of just amounts where it's like, well, some horrible genocide happened. Yes, it does seem excessive, but again, like it does seem arbitrary in terms of where we draw the line of what is excessive and what isn't. And I would just say, I think empirically, first of all, most people in the world are theists, and most people in the world don't have the intuitions to say that these are incompatible. Now, granted, there are different kinds of theism. They don't always have omnitheism, but I think the point is that intuitions for most people don't seem to be that these evils are so horrendous that they can't justify belief in God. At least most people don't. I'm not appealing to an ad populum. Just because most people believe it doesn't make it true, but it does mean that we need to reconsider, I think, our seemings when it comes to that. Other thing I would just say is empirically, not only do we know that the most destitute countries are also the most religious. So again, doesn't seem to be people who are suffering the most don't seem to be phased in their theism, generally speaking, by it. But I'd also say that if you look at things like NDEs, going back to that, or even miracle claims, the vast majority of them, which are the closest to a defeat condition that we could observe, right? 98% or so of NDEs are extremely positive, and people come back feeling spiritually regenerated. Like, very rarely you'll have some kind of hell escape. But I don't know of an NDE where someone came back and was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so mad of God that I almost died. I was in so much pain in the hospital. I scared my family of this stuff." It's always like, "Wow, that was so beautiful. I can't wait to go back. I didn't even want to come. I was in so much peace." You don't have people holding this bitterness of like, "Oh, why'd you kill me this early? Why'd I have to go through all this stuff?" Right? If anything, they'd rather stay there. Same with miracles. I've never heard of a case, to my knowledge, where someone was healed. And I have cases of people who were sick for 10, 15, 20 years or so. And they never said, "Oh my gosh, I was healed, but gosh, he should have healed me 5 years prior. Why did he make me wait this long?" God is wrong for doing that. It's always, "Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. This is part of my testimony. It's such a great thing." So from the cases that I've seen of people who do, overcome evils that we can observe of in this case, it's almost always positive. And you don't have these people looking back and regretting or saying it was excessive. It shouldn't have been this much. It was unnecessary. It's always a positive outlook on it and how it's changed them spiritually. So if that's the bar we're going to, then I just don't know what kind of horrendous evil it would take, because I don't know how we could establish that it wouldn't be good enough, given that we have all this other testimonial data to the contrary.
Yeah. Sorry, sorry, you went pretty long on there. So
I did.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Don't worry about it. Do you think existential inertia is true? Yes, some variation of it. So I hold to a theistic version of it. Next question. I know this is mildly off topic. Hasn't went? No, I haven't. Sorry.
I haven't.
I haven't. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. How's your social life going? Yes. Who killed? Okay, I don't know that question. Sorry.
Who killed Jeffrey Epstein? The
Yeah.
bed.
Are you a writer full time? Not yet. Although, so the department I work for, I don't know if they're gonna have me write anything. I probably gonna have to help them write the policies and stuff. We'll see. I just don't know what projects they're gonna give me on that. All right. Let's see here.
Actually, quite a lot of questions for only 9
Yeah.
viewers.
I'm scrolling down, so I'm gonna do either. Okay. Do either of you think that Christian apologetics spend too much time engaging with atheists rather than building coherent beliefs amongst ourselves? It almost seems like we give them too much air, or airtime, I should say.
Other than the fact that they didn't put the H in Christian, sorry, did that guy. I don't know, because I feel like apologetics should more be so for the unbeliever, and that Christians should be reaching out, and it should be evangelistic if you're going to use it in that way. But I'm not so much as concerned with the inner Christian kind of debates on denomination or secondary theological issues. Not that those aren't important, but I wouldn't call that apologetics per se, or at least I don't think it
Well,
should.
unless you're a Catholic apologist.
Yeah, Trent Horn, I guess. I guess that's so. But I guess I didn't C.S. Lewis have the one quote of like, if Christianity is in a room, I just want to get them in a corner, and like once we're in that, that's fine. Like keep them over the line, and then once they're there, we can talk about the second and tertiary doctrines in that way.
How long have you been on YouTube? I think 4 years. I would have to go back and see my older content. Because if you watch some of my older videos, it's just a bunch of hangouts. And I think I did those like 4 years ago, I believe. I'll have to go back and see. But thank you for the response. Can't wait to see your work in the book eventually. Yeah. So, yeah, that's good to hear, Kyle. Good for you. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. That's it for questions. So, yeah, just again, like I said earlier, guys, I'm going to be writing a book, and I'll be finishing the other projects that I collaborate with other people on. I will also be on other channels as well. So just because I'm leaving my YouTube channel, like just because I'm not posting anything here, doesn't mean I'm not going to exist. Like I'll still be on YouTube. It's just I won't be here. And then what else? And then, yeah, so I won't be back until at least July 1st of 2024. So that's 1 year from now. So 1 year from now, we'll see where things are, and I'll make my announcement if I decide to come back. But I've decided I'm going to quit YouTube for a whole year, 1 full year. And I specifically picked this day because, it's the first of the month and it's like right in the middle. So, sorry, I said spring of 2024. So 1 year. All right. Hey, I just joined. When are your book and Caleb's Miracle books coming out? So
Kyle hasn't started his yet.
I haven't even started mine. So
I'm hoping that mine will be out probably. I'm planning on finishing writing it probably by the end of probably by December of this year, and having editing and out. And that depends on if I'm just publishing it myself or have to get other things. Probably the spring of 2024. Although again, that depends if I want to get endorsements from people and send it out. That could take longer, but I'm expecting it to be probably around spring of 2024. But that's tentative. Although I have, I will be trying to put out content. I'm still doing podcasts and stuff like that, promoting it and doing snippets of it. So it's still out there, but I may drop a few preview chapters before that. So I guess just be on the lookout for that on my Facebook or whatever.
Yeah. Since you've been changing your views a lot lately, are your old videos still relevant? I would say if you go like 2 years back, no. But anything like 2 years ago and forward, then they're pretty relevant. Especially all the Swinburne stuff. Anything past so there's a video it's called Revolutionize and Apologetics. That was when I really shifted my views. So anything after that is still relevant. But anything prior to that is not as relevant, I would say. And then the further back you go, it's just less and less relevant. So that's what I would say. I think the cutoff point is going to be that video specifically, and then anything after that. I think that's it. So, in case any of you guys were wondering, you can still contact me. So I'm on Discord. Feel free to private message me. I'll try to get back to you. And then you can also reach out to me on email as well. So my email is mathapologist@gmail.com if you have any questions. So yeah, do not hesitate to reach out. If you have any questions, reach out to me. In case, anyone wants to has any questions or anything like that. Are you a classical theist? Yes, I am. Awesome. Super looking forward to it. Thanks for all you. Yeah. Cool. So yeah. Anyways, Caleb, any final thoughts? I know this is my stream, but you kind of joined.
This was very laid back. I just had hopped on. I wish you the best of luck in your book, and I'm hoping that you can get endorsements from people like Sejwadi, Rasmussen, Doherty, and others who would probably have really nice things to say.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've never written a book before, but it's going to be totally worth it. I think it'll be better than the series I was going to do. And it'll take way less, and it would I don't know if it would take us less time, but I can like fully flesh out my ideas. So yeah. What's your Discord? I don't have a Discord, so you would have to find me on some of the philosophy ones. Sorry, guys.
Maybe you can make one.
Yeah, I don't know. If I do make one, I'll announce it, but probably not. Anyways, thank you guys for watching and listening, and have a nice day.